How's it going, everybody? ZBilbs back here with another video, and today I've got another metal album ranking video for you, and that is going to be Ghost's albums after the release of their newest album, Imperia, and now that they actually have a sizable-ish amount of albums to rank, now that they're at 5, I decided to give you my rankings from least favorite to favorite. There's definitely a few hard choices in there, and I know most of you will not agree with them, so just be civil about it, but let me know how your ranking would be in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get going. So at my 5th and least favorite spot, by a decent amount, I have Opus Eponymous. Now this is their debut album, and a lot of people really love this album, and I can totally understand why. This album feels like their darkest and most just consistently heavy metal album out of all of the other albums, pretty much. There's some really solid songs on there, but unfortunately the only ones that I could really get into was Elizabeth, or Elizabeth, as they say in the song. I think that's a decent one, and then Ritual, I think, is an all-time best. Not the all-time best, but an all-time best for Ghost. I think that's a fantastic song. But as for the other songs, it might be a byproduct of them just not having super high production quality on their songs, but they all the vocals just sound so similar, just song to song. I just can't see, there's definitely variation and interesting stuff there, but there's not enough of that hook that quite gets me and grabs me. Really, just Elizabeth and Ritual are the only two that have that just fun chorus that sticks with me. There's stuff to like there, and I know if you love this one and you're commenting below, oh, this song, like, I'm sorry, this one may come around to me, but as of right now, there's just not much that really sticks with me. Still, I can see why a lot of people love it. I just think it's an alright album, but that is coming in at my 5th spot. But moving on to 4th place, I have their sophomore album, Infestism, or something like that. All their albums are so hard to pronounce, so bear with me. Infestism, in my opinion, is a pretty solid step up from their debut album, and I think that they've got a more solid, consistent, and just diverse feeling as far as their songs go. They've also got just some all-time great songs in there. Obviously, Year Zero is fantastic. My favorite from the album, ahead of Year Zero just by a hair, is Zombie Queen, or Goulet. Some other solid ones in there. You've got Secular Haze, you've got Monstrance Clock, but really that's kind of it. I'd say this one's just really spotty when it comes to quality. I'd say aside from those 4, and I think maybe one other one that I've missed, there's just nothing that really quite sticks with me. I do like the theming and the aesthetics in here. Once again, I said that this one does have a little bit more of a fun, diverse feeling than Opus Eponymous did, which is why I enjoy it some more. It's got a lot better songs to it. Overall, when it came down to it, there's just definitely other albums that I liked a significant amount more, and this one just didn't quite do it for me. Still a solid album though, but that is Infestism. Moving on to my 3rd spot, there's a solid gap between these next two. This will be definitely a controversial pick, but at 3, I have Prequel, or Prequel. This one came out, and I think for the most part, most music fans enjoyed this one, but most metal/Ghost fans did not like or hated this album, mostly because this is their most poppy, most pop rock album, mainstream album out of all of the other albums. So I can see why metal fans didn't really like this one. Especially, you got Dance Macabre, which is just straight up, even if you don't like metal or Ghost, chances are you're gonna like Dance Macabre. That's a straight up just dance music song. But putting aside all of that bias, all of that stigma around pop rock and non-metal, I think this has just got some really fun tracks in spite of its lesser metal leanings. You've got Rats, which is my favorite from this album. Faith is also great. You've got some really fun instrumentals with Miasma, Helvis, however you say that one. Once again, Dance Macabre, you know, it's very mainstream, it's very, you know, iffy on whether it makes a lot of people not like this album, but I still think it's a good song regardless of its genre. And then also Which Image, I think, is also a really good song that a lot of people sleep on, which overall makes this album, well, I don't think, once again, it's not entirely consistent in its quality. It's definitely got some, there's one like really bad song, I don't even remember the name, but it's like, don't you forget about dying, don't you forget about your friend death. Like, I remember that lyric because it's just so stupid. But I digress. I think this is a good, maybe even a very good album that's just held back a little bit by that consistent quality, a little bit of that just thematic elements to it too, maybe a little bit too pop rock, I don't know, but still a good album, and that is Prequel at number 3. Coming in at number 2, I've got their most recent album, and that is Imperia. This is definitely one, if you saw my review, you'll know that I definitely really enjoyed this album, but there's definitely problems with it. I would say the first time I listened to this album, I honestly think if I made this list right after I listened to it the first time, I would have put it at 3rd or 4th. Like, honestly, I was not the biggest fan of a lot of songs, but like most of Ghost's stuff, this has really grown in my appreciation as I've listened to it more. And I just think it's a really solid album now. I think probably the biggest downfall of this album is it doesn't have one song that sticks out as just an all-time Ghost great song. I'd say the closest that comes to that is Respite on the Spittles, Vital Fields. I should really look up how to say that. But there's no song that's like an all-time great Ghost song for me like every other album does. Even Prequel, Rats is one of my all-time favorites. But it does have some really solid, consistent quality throughout, you know, with the aforementioned Respite song. You've got freaking Hunter's Moon, you've got Call Me Little Sunshine, you've got Spillways, a couple other solid ones. And I really love the theming to this one too, even though it's not as heavy as it could be. I like the, you know, jazzy, funky feeling. Apparently it's about the fall of empires. I couldn't really point any song that was about that except maybe 20s, but overall just a really good album that I've seen generally across the board. People have thought this is a pretty solid album, although it's kind of mixed, I've seen. But Imperia, definitely good album. Just couldn't come quite close to my top pick, which is number 1 by a decent percentage, and that is Meliora at number 1. This is my favorite by a pretty wide margin, and for good reason, because this has got some fantastic songs on here. Cerise, From the Pinnacle to the Pit, Absolution, Deus in Absentia, He Is, Spirit, you know, just a really, really good album. My favorites would probably be Cerise and Pinnacle to the Pit. Oh, Mummy Dust too, that's definitely right there with those ones. But this one, just more than all of the other albums, is just more consistent across the board. There is, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 songs that I would probably pass on. Even Majesty, which I'd probably pass on, I still think is like a decent song. So overall, just a really, really solid album. I've come back and I've listened to all the songs in this album many times. It has really diverse, fun feeling to it, just like Imperia, but it also has, you know, a really solid core heavy metal, style to it that's prevalent throughout pretty much the entire album, which is really nice. And for me, this is Ghost at their best. I think it'll take a really, really solid effort to top it. But that is my list. That is my Ghost albums ranked from worst to best. So let me know in the comments, how would you rank the albums? Did you agree with my list? Let me know in the comments. Probably you didn't, but yeah. Let me know what other bands you'd like me to do a review or ranking for. It might be a little bit till my next video, but sorry about that. But yeah, that's all I got for you. I'll see you later.